not sure who is. There we go. Sorry, I also got a message that the sound was low, so I just saw a prompt that I could make it into stereo. Anyway, never mind. Somebody else can press record, please, if you can. And I will introduce you to this beautiful person in front of us right now, Mel Horvath-Lucid, who, as I mentioned, is a longtime friend of Unity Kitchener and Unity in general. They, forgive me, are a creative person who enjoys singing, painting, art, journaling, writing, yoga, and deep conversation that challenges thinking in new and expansive ways. They show up in their work as an interfaith spiritual director, an ordained minister in the spiritual tradition, and works in restorative justice, with a focus on how we can do things differently towards love, peace, and healing. At the core, they care about creating bigger places for belonging and seek to encourage folks to begin within. When not working, you might find them at the dog park with their best pal, Walter. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Mel, it's wonderful to have you back.
Good morning. It's good to be here. Before I slide into today's conversation, I want to invite you back to the last time I spoke. And if you weren't here, what I was speaking on was humility. And what I was inviting you to consider is the difference between particularly the Western understanding of humility, which is to make oneself small and of little importance. That is the dictionary definition of that word. And the Buddhist understanding that humility is not actually the thing itself, but rather the byproduct of the application of joy, of caring, compassion, of understanding and love and joy in our lives. And that the natural byproduct of those virtues, of those practices, of, as Charles Fillmore was talking about, living in those higher possibilities of ways of being, doing, thinking, that some of that will rub off on us. And so when that does, it has us seeing ourselves clearer, and in turn seeing one another with new eyes, seeing with a clear understanding of who we are. And so that idea of humility as a companion really does call us back into sensitivity and equanimity. What does it look like, and what does it mean to be with what is, whatever that is, and to be with more of it in a way that we start to hold a more full picture of ourselves and one another. Part of that is the understanding of a powerful pause. And one of the tactics or tools that our world uses to sort of move things forward is to move so quickly that we don't actually understand or absorb what is happening. And that is done very, very effectively, right? So our brains, we understand how our brains work. That's done effectively. And the possibility, or the hope within that then, is that because that's done so effectively, when we ourselves take on the tools of what it means to powerfully pause, we effectively slow back down our own understanding of the world around us. We start to come back into ourselves, back into our homes. And so a powerful pause for me is like the antidote to a world of distraction, a world that calls us outside of ourselves to look at this thing and then to have the next thing happen in speed by. Powerful pause is a tool for being with what is, and an antidote for that idea of distracting. Really, it's all meditation. We've been meditating since we joined this morning. And we can continue to meditate, to be present with what is after. These practices of powerful pause have many components, and I found myself actually really, really challenged on which ones I was going to pick today, because of course there's more. Of course, there's always more. And I'd invite you to consider the component of abiding breath. Breath as a tool to come back to your body, breath as a tool to connect to more of what is. I'd venture to suggest that breath is a faithful friend. I mean, consider it. The second you notice it, it's there on your next inhale, present there on your next exhale, ever with you. The connection starts to deepen and we move back more into who we are, simply by becoming more present again with our breath. How magnificent it is to understand the expansion and contraction of the lungs, of life, of movement, all of these things flowing in and out. And as we expand in the inhale, we start to remember our connectedness to everything. We expand and we inhale and grow our own body. And we start to grow beyond our body in connection to our communities, our city, our earth, our infinite galaxy, until we're reaching into the infinite beyond. That is the capacity of breath. It means then, too, it's to draw the infinite of the beyond, moving backwards through the planets to the earth, to your cities, communities, where you find yourself and in. That is the power of connectedness to everything, simply through connecting back to our breath. Air is a powerful and essential element of our world and ourselves. When you think about it, we're breathing in air that has been breathed in and out by many beings, trees, plants, matter, earth, water, air, fire, all of that connected in that space of air. And I pause even there for a moment because breath is in essence the quickest way back to reminding of ourselves of how connected we are. And we can actually create pathways in our brain for which we just simply become aware again that we are breathing. I am here. I am breathing. I am connected. That pathway can become almost effortless, almost intrinsic into who we are simply by remembering we are breathing. And we know that when we are disrupted, when we are activated, when we are in stress, when we are in the sympathetic system, that we move into symptoms of shallow breathing, quick breathing, not breathing at all, holding our breath, right? Feeling like there's a lump in our throat. And so I would suggest that breath is a guide back into our parasympathetic system. It's why after surgeries, there's the suggestion of at least once per hour breathing 3 deep breaths, nourishing every cell in your body with the connection of everything through that act. Drawing yourself back into your body, back into your feelings, back into presence. And at this time of year, with the snow heavily falling, at least where I am, breath is also the wisdom of winter. What it means to slow down, to touch the earth gently, to know that you too will melt away. And to feel that with honor, with reverence, that changing, that shifting, that presence. To be present now is an incredible gift. And yet we skip over these simple things like breath, as though it isn't the connector to our very being. And yet it is. And it's there whether we notice it or thank it or not. And so instead, we could potentially breathe with gratitude. I want to offer you a piece of writing I wrote about four years ago, and powerful pause in time. I don't know your relationship with time, but I know that you have one. And time is an interesting, powerful piece of a pause. I wrote this: time marches on, and one of our greatest deceptions is convincing ourselves that it won't end. We often fail to notice that time continues to move forward, even if the clock appears still. It never goes back, it simply moves round and round, never the same, yet returns and repeats. We learn like gears grinding or gliding effortlessly. We learn or we don't. The clock now sits on the dining room table, its gears and innards spread across it. It will never return to the same state again. I often think about speaking in a space like a Unity about something as definitive and oftentimes avoided as death, endings, grief, and our feelings around it. Yet I will offer this: there's been a multitude of studies about the happiest people being people who understand this moment is a gift. This journey in the form that we are in the ways that we are living, even in the circumstances and challenges we find ourselves in, is a profound gift. And in the large scheme of things, it is really a glimmer, a moment. And it calls us back more to Mary Oliver's suggestion in her poetry: what will you do with your one wild and precious life? With this time, with this breath that you currently find yourself with. But time, of course, is more exciting and interesting than this idea of the clock. There's textures of time, and we know this. There's at least 2 dimensions of time, and of course there's more. And for today, just offering 2. The objective, the ticking clock, the seconds, the days, the weeks, the months, the year. This is absolutely time. But there is also the subjective, the feeling of each moment, the second where your whole life changes. Those years where you live lifetimes, and those lifetimes where you feel you have but lived a year. Or the way that being in flow can make you forget time altogether. Conversations that last for hours. Moments where you see somebody and you experience a deep connection that time didn't build, something else did. This subjective relationship with time, I would suggest, is equally valuable and linked to our understanding of the objective perception of time. So when we apply time to the pause, it allows other pieces to change, form, dissolve, allows us to become more aware of what is really going on within or around us. It invites us deeper into the unknown. I'd also suggest it invites us back into the subjective, the intuitive. If we were to listen to ourselves, we would find ourselves leaning in at certain moments and wanting to and needing to listen to when to lean back out. We would find ourselves giving more room for others to do the same. So many times when we are challenged with a pause, it is because to pause means we would have to let go of control. And I've spoken before, in Buddhism, there's a near enemy of connection, and it is control. And that means that sometimes ways of being that are controlling can actually feel comforting to us. And when we address those, partly by being with what is and allowing it to be there and watching for a moment to see what it is, to see what is going on around us, this capacity to be with what is will inevitably change us. We will transform simply by our capacity to be with what is, to give time and apply time into the pause, to take a moment, to take a breath, to take a breather, to simply watch, to witness. These qualities are a piece of the pause puzzle. I also want to add, likewise, the element fire also seems to be a changer. It's often accompanied by emotions like anger. I want to name that anger is sometimes not even articulated as emotion, but rather an initiatory state. Yeah, how many of us were taught to not feel that anger? Oh, anger, you got to stuff it down, or you got to throw it, you got to do something with it. And yet, when we learn how to pause and open to what is, that anger, I would suggest, is oftentimes the gateway to telling us how we are out of consent with ourselves, and to call us back toward our sense of what is okay and not okay, and into our boundaries. So that time that we oftentimes avoid giving is because it will drop us into, vulnerably into, our own stuff, our own feelings about the thing. And I'm suggesting that that is where power lies, particularly when we meet what is, when we meet that piece of ourselves and we hold it, and we meet it with that humility, with that virtue of love, care, sympathy, joy. Who are you? What is this really about for you? It shifts and changes things. In my practice, the most often avoided experience is that of anger. And in practice of holding space for others, in that, it has been the most potent place for change, for liberation, and for empowerment. And that's the paradox of the willingness that we must have, that we could have, to go into what is, and then look again with new eyes, with kinder eyes at that piece, to see more of it. So choosing to look at more of the picture is to choose to look at more of ourselves. And we oftentimes want to avoid that, because parts of the picture, we just don't appreciate them, or we just don't like that it's there. We don't want that to be the way that it is. And yet when we look at more of the picture, we will inevitably see more of ourselves. One of my teachers, Rev. Angel Kyoto Williams, says this: we need to develop the habit of seeing ourselves in others. And if we can't see this self, this one, oh, then we can't see any other self. So that tricky part is when we want to hold an aspect of ourselves in highest regard. It's like a human quality. So let's not get too hard on ourselves here. Of course, I want to see myself in the best light possible. But if we excavate what is and we bring it into the light, we will come to see that it is a necessary piece of us, that it isn't what we thought it was, by bringing it into the light. It means that we have to challenge ideas that we've been well taught or conditioned towards, that we should hide our grief, suffer in silence. Nobody will understand. People don't go through the same thing we do. Only inevitably we know that that is not true. And it is those very things that we think are so, so, so undesirable about ourselves that we come to lift them up into the light, and we come to see that those are the points of connection. I don't know if any of you have been hearing about Let Them theory. It's a tattoo that's been on my hand for years. It's a book by Mel Robbins, and a theory that I'm really grateful she has spoken of, as she made it modern and accessible to more people, that she does understand and attribute the roots to Buddhism. And so I really appreciate that. The Let Them theory is not a tool to be applied to violence. And so that's one of the first challenges. So I just want to name that off the top. Acts of oppression, acts of violence or abuse are not where we would apply the Let Them theory. We would seek to interrupt and ensure safety first. That said, outside of the context of violence for which this does not apply, radical acceptance is a psychological concept rooted in Buddhist philosophy, which says suffering comes from wanting things to be different from what they are. What these two simple words, let them, allow you to do is apply these concepts to modern life. So Mel Robbins offers the feeling of hurt that she had when a group of her friends went away for the weekend and she wasn't invited. Now, many times what we do with situations that hurt us is we say, oh, maybe there wasn't room in the car. Maybe they did send me a message and I forgot it. Maybe they don't like me at all and we have no friendship whatsoever. We create a story or a narrative around it. And what she's suggesting is in the tool of let them. That group of people decided to go away together. Let them. And simply allow it to be what it is. That we can come to a different place of understanding, similar to that piece where I said to you before about feeling, that would ask ourselves sort of 3 different pathways to maybe getting to more of our own interaction with that. What happened? My really close friends decided to go away without me. What do I want to do about, or how do I feel about that? Would be the second question. And allowing yourself to feel with that and be with that, but not towards the idea that you wish to change the choice of your friends. Ugh. So I say again, not towards the idea that you are now going to seek to change the choice of your friends. And the third question then would be, what do I want to do about it? And when we slow that down and we do that work, we come to a different understanding of who we are. It's even for me understanding that there's been spaces or places I haven't been invited to, but when I've done a little, just even a tiny little bit of soul searching, I found that I didn't want to go. And I've realized that certain ones of my friends know that. I'm not really a big, loud place, booming music person. And we can say yes, but the invitation feels so nice. And I'm saying, let them go, do what it is they want to do. Let me assess how I feel about that. And let me ask myself what, if anything, I wish to do about that. That takes us back into our own needs, our wants, our desires, our boundaries, our what is okay, not okay. It would probably call us to ask what we wish to invest into a relationship. It might even have us asking how we want to relate at all. I don't know the answer to that, but it's a new way of being with what is than what I was taught growing up. And really, in essence, it says this: instead of letting emotions drive your actions, you can witness the emotion. You be there for you. You be the loving parent that you wish you would have had, or that you maybe did have grown up. And you start to witness and presence your own emotions. And you start to decide what those mean for you, what data they're giving you, what you come to understand, its origins, and then you choose your response. As part of responsibility and accountability, calls us back into being actors in our lives rather than simply reacting to the things around us. The location of power is not in changing the world, but rather in knowing, communicating with, and healing yourself. That really is to say something that we've heard many different ways, shapes, and forms before, which is that we do not change the world, we change ourselves. And then, interestingly enough, similar to the byproduct of humility, the world around us begins to change. We start to see more, we see it differently, we're able to navigate it in a different way. And it is because we continue to have these practices of pause that bring us back in to ourselves, back into awareness of this being, of this person, that who else would be responsible for us than us, right? You are responsible for you. Brings us back into that. A step further may be to say, I am responsible for my thoughts, words, and actions. And that is not to diminish the impacts of others on us. It is not to see how we will not inevitably interact with another, but it is to say that ultimately at the end of the day, I am the person who is most likely to influence how I show up. And I want to be in my values. I want to practice them, and I want them to show up. We can practice anything. Are you aware of what you are practicing? It's really the question. And then the last piece of let them theory that I would want to offer you is this: growing our capacity for conflict. And I know that for some, they hear that and it can be a real restricting feeling that comes upon them. grow my capacity for conflict. Yes, that is what the suggestion is. For discomfort, for the undesired. Oftentimes, what we seek to do and we think of it liberation, and it's a piece of it. It's the moment you say, I don't want to experience this sort of peace, and you set a new boundary. Careful, though, that we're not creating walls instead, right? Because walls, they don't only keep what is undesired out, they keep what is desired out too. So that soft flexibility is that we can be with things that are uncomfortable, that we can be in conflict, difference, that we can relate across those differences, not toward endurance, but rather toward empowerment. And I want to say that again, because if I'm sharing that and you're hearing it through an idea of tolerance that has you having to endure more hardship in your life, I would encourage you to notice that, because that is not what that means. What that means is for you to notice what you are experiencing, to ask yourself how you're feeling about it, and then to ask yourself what you want to do about it. It is the very opposite. It is when we start to move toward acceptance of what is, and we start to see what we can do differently to interact with what is. Part of a piece that I feel like it's important for me to add this morning, just checking time before we step into a time of meditation, is this. I noticed the quote by Martin Luther King this morning: be an agent for harmony in the world. And I think about Martin Luther King, and the truth of Martin Luther King is that when Martin Luther King was alive, there was so much resistance to his words, to his message. Incredible amounts. People were completely angry at the idea of hate does not drive out hate, only love can do that. And I imagine the amount of discomfort that he would have experienced and conflict he would have experienced holding his own. And I would offer that that is the very moment where peace comes in. Not because the world around us is more peaceful, but because we ourselves are in integrity with our rooted higher truth. So as I invite you into a time of meditation today, I invite you back to the idea of abiding breath. For some, this may mean closing your eyes and touching inward, and for others, it may be keeping your eyes open, being with more of your surroundings, and still breathing. Breathing may be more like the beauty of water, waves coming in on the inhale, and then waves moving out on the exhale. Inviting that breath into your body with acceptance of just where you are right now. Maybe noticing for a moment that beautiful heart of yours that beats whether you notice it or not, that beats whether you think it or not. And perhaps instead offering gratitude to that beautiful heart of yours. Maybe drawing into your awareness the cherished sacredness of this one wild and precious life. And even in the dead of winter, maybe noticing under the surface of the snow, those seeds taking shape, taking form, calling you into more of who you are, courageously, with joy, with compassion, with bravery, to be who you are, to be more of who you are. Maybe for a moment, deepening that understanding of let them, to become aware of the many things around us that are not the way that we wish them to be. And then to take a moment to feel to acknowledge ourselves, and to come back into the power of our own possibility to choose now, to be engaged with and in connection with more of this one wild and precious life. Whether those moments are beautiful, challenging, expansive, constrictive, to see the absolute gift of this moment of this life. And as I close with a piece of poetry that I wrote 2 years ago, inviting yourself to consider today how you want to step in to the rest of your day, to see that you are the stepper, to see that you hold so much power in your own life, particularly when we breathe back in to the possibility of who we are within this constellations and universe of creation. To allow something to be broken, to acknowledge the mess and chaos, to remain unsure, to lean into the discomfort, to recognize that life is a myriad of experiences, and that what we prefer to ignore still exists, both within and outside ourselves. We write our stories, we create our context, we learn, we grow, and we gain understanding. We change. We write a new story again based on the lessons we've learned before. But I am not simply my story. My experiences are subjective. And in sharing them, I can come to understand and in sharing them, I can come to understand new truths. The many stained glass views of others looking back, seeing in tones and shades that are different than my own. And then I see anew in new colors, with a fresh understanding, with new eyes gaining wisdom rooted in truth. And we rise, we write a new story, with the understanding that each of us holds a pen this time. We write, we erase, we build, we tear down, and we choose to own that. We do not own the whole story, yet we are a part of it. We are not separate. In the act of writing and erasing, building and tearing down, we come to see how truly connected we really are.